It started with static. Not unusual considering the depth of space we were monitoring. Our team at the Deep Space Signal Interception Array, DSSIA for short, was used to bursts of nothing, scrambled waves, interference from satellites, even occasional pirate broadcasts bouncing off the atmosphere. But this wasn't noise. It was rhythm. I was 3 hours into a quiet night shift, half asleep, half scanning meaningless charts, when the transmission came through. A long, pulsing series of hums. Then a gap. Then it repeated, same hums, same timing. I adjusted the array's direction, assuming it was bleed-through from lunar telemetry. It wasn't. The signal wasn't coming from the moon. It was coming from behind it. I logged the anomaly and tagged it for review, but something in my chest refused to let it go. I ran a basic Fourier breakdown. Clean pattern, repetitive, intentional, nothing natural about it. I called it in. DSSIA control, this is Operator 7. Possible coded transmission. Source appears lunar shadow side adjacent. There was silence, then a sharp click. A different voice came through. Not control. Operator 7, stand by. Do not relay. Acknowledge receipt only. I hesitated. Acknowledged. They disconnected. No call sign. No tag. Just them. 10 minutes later, my access terminal locked. Every interface shut down except for one line of red text. Do not pursue this frequency. No explanation. No investigation. The next morning, when the day shift arrived, there was no record of my report. The logs had been scrubbed. When I confronted control, they said I'd probably misread background EM bleed. Case closed. But that night, I took a copy of the signal home. I knew I shouldn't have, but curiosity is a disease. And this signal, it felt alive. I ran it through a spectrographic mapper, visualized the waveform into a spectrogram. That's when it hit me. The gaps between pulses weren't random. They were intervals, ratios, planetary orbits, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars. Each frequency gap matched a planet's orbital resonance around the Sun. The last interval was longer, twice that of Earth. The same ratio as Earth's orbit to the Moon's. But then one final gap longer still. Something beyond. Something that shouldn't be there. As I stared at the pattern, one more horrifying realization set in. The waveform didn't curve like natural signals. Pulsed like breath. I leaned back in my chair, cold sweat forming across my neck. The transmission wasn't just a signal. It was aware, and it wasn't meant for us. It was meant for someone on the other side, behind the moon, where no signal should bounce from, where no echo should live, unless something was there, watching, breathing, transmitting, waiting for a reply. I didn't sleep that night, not because of what I found, but because I knew, without any proof, that someone else had heard it before me, and they hadn't lived long enough to tell anyone. The next day, I didn't go into work. Not because I was afraid, but because something about the message had dug under my skin like a splinter you can't see but can still feel. I spent the morning pacing my apartment, replaying the transmission, slowing it down, speeding it up, reversing it. It didn't matter. The pattern stayed the same. The message wasn't changing. It was waiting. By 3 p.m., I convinced myself I was being paranoid. Maybe Control had panicked because it interfered with classified comms. Maybe it wasn't alive, just clever noise. I grabbed my keys and headed down to my car. I needed air, coffee, distraction. That's when I saw him. Middle-aged, gray coat, no ID badge, no car nearby. Just a man standing in the corner of the parking lot, next to the hedge, pretending to scroll through his phone. But the screen was off. He didn't move when I passed him, didn't look up, but I felt him watching me. I got in my car, locked the door, pretended to check my phone. 30 seconds passed. Then he walked, slow, steady, across the lot. Not toward any car. Not toward the building. Toward me. I froze. He stopped 6 feet from the driver's side window and finally looked up. He didn't blink. "Mr. Jensen," he said calmly, voice muffled through the glass. "We need to talk." I didn't answer. My heart kicked into overdrive. He hadn't asked if I was Mr. Jensen. He knew. He reached into his coat. My hand went straight for the keys. But he didn't pull a weapon. He pulled a badge. Not a real one. Just a black card. No name. No agency. Only a silver circle printed in the center with 2 overlapping hemispheres. Earth and something else. The man raised the card higher. "You're not in trouble," he said. "We're just here to protect everyone." I cracked the window an inch. From what? From curiosity. I stared at him. "So you did block the logs?" He didn't answer. He just smiled, as if that confirmed it. "You heard something you shouldn't have," he continued. "But it's okay. We're not here to silence you. We just want to make sure you interpret it correctly." I didn't know what to say. He leaned in slightly. "There are things out there that mimic logic. They speak in patterns, lure you in, but they are not messages. They are keys. And the moment you decode them, the lock opens." My mouth was dry. "What's behind the lock?" His smile faded. "Another Earth," he said, "but not one you want to visit." I blinked. He stepped back, then walked away. No goodbye, no threat, just vanished around the building. I sat frozen in my car for nearly 15 minutes. When I finally looked at the black card he'd left on my windshield, I turned it over. There was a single word etched into the back. "Return." I didn't go back upstairs. I didn't go anywhere. I sat in my car with that black card in my hand, the word "return," staring up at me like an accusation. I turned it over again and again, waiting for something. Ink to shift, invisible writing to appear, a code to unlock. But it was just a matte surface, smooth, silent. Still, I couldn't shake the man's words. Another Earth, but not one you want to visit. What did that even mean? And how could there be another Earth behind the moon? That's when I remembered the signal. I drove straight to a diner on the outskirts of town with weak Wi-Fi and no security cameras. I booted up my backup laptop, one I never connected to work, and loaded the transmission again. I opened a decoding tool and began searching the gaps in the waveform for binary. Nothing. Then I remembered the man's voice. "They are not messages. They are keys." I didn't need to translate the transmission. I needed to use it. So I layered the waveform over a celestial chart. Not sound, not light, position. And there it was. 12 peaks in the waveform matched the alignment of Earth's solar system during a specific rotation cycle. But the final 2 pulses didn't match any known body in our system. Not an orbit, not a pattern. They were offset, as if they represented something that only exists from a different vantage point. I shifted the origin point behind the moon, adjusting for gravitational curvature. That's when the map snapped into alignment. 2 objects, one roughly the size of Earth, the other smaller, closer to the moon, almost like a mirror station. A relay, a gate. I marked the location and cross-referenced it with every astronomical database I could access. Nothing. No registered object. No anomaly. Just black sky. So I switched to visual spectrum. And there, buried in old, declassified lunar surveillance photos, was a faint blur, consistent with artificial interference. Not a natural object. Not a shadow. Camouflage. Someone or something was hiding in plain sight. I sat back, staring at the screen. Could it be a sensor echo? A lens flare? Maybe. But then I noticed something else. The interference pattern in the image lined up perfectly with the modulation wave in the original transmission. A one-to-one match. The photo wasn't just evidence. It was part of the message, and it was pointing somewhere. A specific location on the moon's far side. A set of coordinates burned into my screen. 13.2 degrees south, 164.8 degrees east. A crater called Mare Ingenii, the Sea of Cleverness. Fitting, because whoever was behind this didn't just want to be found. They wanted to be found by someone who understood the invitation. I shut the laptop, and in that moment, I made a decision that would destroy the life I'd built. I was going to the crater. I didn't care what was waiting, because the truth was calling, and I was done ignoring it. I didn't book a flight. I didn't tell friends or coworkers. I just left. I pulled every favor I had from my old MIT connections, reaching out to a retired aerospace engineer who once worked for a black-budget division of NASA, Project Whispergate. That's what he called it. At first, he refused to talk. Then, after I mentioned Mare Ingenii, he went quiet for 12 seconds. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped to a whisper. "Where did you hear that name?" "I saw it in the transmission." "You accessed it?" "Yes." Another long pause. "You need to come now. Bring the card." I didn't ask how he knew about the card. I already knew the answer. 3 flights later, I was in a compound deep in Arizona, carved into the side of a mesa, abandoned since the 1980s. Or so the government claimed. He met me at the gate, older than I remembered, skin pale like he hadn't seen the sun in years. He took the card from me without a word and led me inside. "You're not the first," he said as we passed through a tunnel of rusted bulkheads and cables. "But you're the first to come alone." We entered a room with walls covered in printed images, lunar maps, radar overlays, strange mirrored craters. One was circled in red. Mare Ingenii, the Sea of Cleverness. "This crater," he said, tapping the glass with a crooked finger. "It's not just a hole. It's a door." I stayed silent. "Whispergate was a sub-project," he continued, classified even beyond the Apollo anomalies. It began in 1962, when Surveyor 4 disappeared mid-transmission. When we pulled the feed, it showed a shadow that didn't match any known structure. He pulled out a photo, grainy but clear enough. A towering arch, half buried in the crater's edge. Smooth, angular, not made by erosion. That structure is a relay, a receiver. It only activates when a precise waveform is played. "You found that waveform, didn't you?" I nodded. "We think it was left as a test," he said. "A filtration system. Most humans wouldn't even recognize it as anything but noise." I remembered what the agent said in the parking lot. "Keys. But it's more than just a door," he added. "It's a mirror." I frowned. "A mirror of what?" He stared at me. "Earth." I shook my head. "Another Earth?" He didn't answer. He just walked to the back of the room, opened a sealed case, and handed me a file. "Your name's already in here," he said. I opened it. It wasn't a briefing document. It was a manifest, a list of names and dates, all crossed out, except mine. One date remained, December 14th, 2023. "Tomorrow. Your launch is already scheduled," he said. "What launch?" "The one going to the far side." I looked at him. "NASA doesn't have a mission to the far side." He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "They don't," he said, "but they do." And behind him, a screen flickered to life, showing the crater, lit from below, pulsing, alive. The launch site wasn't in Florida, or California, or Baikonur. It was in the middle of the Greenland ice sheet. No official records, no satellites allowed overhead. I was flown there blindfolded, wearing a biometric suit that monitored my vitals every second. They didn't call it a spaceport. They called it Ascension Point. I wasn't alone on the jet. There were 5 others. None of us spoke. None of us looked at each other for more than a moment. We were each strapped into chairs bolted directly to the frame of the aircraft. No windows, no screens. Only a flickering red light overhead and the constant, throbbing hum of pressure-regulated silence. When the plane landed, we were herded off in silence, through tunnels carved into the ice, metal walls, steel doors, no logos, no flags, just the same silver circle I'd seen on the black card. Earth, and a shadow behind it. One by one, we were handed new identities. Mine was Observer 09. No first name, no country, no history. The launch vehicle was nothing like I expected. Not a shuttle, not a rocket. It was a monolith. Jet black, seamless, towering like a shard of obsidian stabbed into the glacier. It didn't sit on a launch pad. It hovered, a few feet off the ground, supported by a hum that vibrated the bones in your skull but made no sound in your ears. They said this was a joint operation, I finally said to the officer escorting me. He looked straight ahead. They always say that, he muttered. We were loaded into the capsule. It smelled sterile, too clean. The seats were molded, not cushioned, like someone had tried to design comfort based on blueprints, not experience. The others still hadn't spoken. I checked the wall panel next to my seat. Manifest. Unknown. Destination. Mare Ingenii. Access Gate 3B. Objective. Observe and return. Protocol status. Red. The capsule shuddered once. And launched. No countdown. No warning. Just upward, so fast it felt like my organs were left behind. The pressure didn't crush me. It pulled me, like gravity was being rewritten. I felt my memories stretch and condense, as if time was being folded around us. Within minutes, we passed low orbit. No spiral trajectory, no orbital slingshot. We went direct, straight for the moon's far side. And when we rounded the gray curve of that ancient face, I saw it, a black stain against the white dust, the crater, Mare Ingenii, and there on its far rim something stood, tall, perfect, like a mirror facing upward, reflecting nothing but space. The obelisk, the gate. As we approached, the pilot's voice finally crackled through the comms. But it wasn't a pilot's voice. It wasn't human. Sequence recognized. It said, arrival accepted. We began to descend. And one by one, the crew turned toward me. They didn't blink. They didn't breathe. Because they weren't passengers. They were watchers. And I wasn't being brought there to observe. I was being delivered. The descent was silent. There was no rumble of engines. No turbulence, no sensation of speed. Just the eerie stillness of the capsule lowering into the crater's maw, drawn by a force none of us could see or understand. The surface of the moon's far side loomed beneath us, but it felt wrong. Too smooth, too deliberate, like the terrain had been placed. We landed without a sound. The hatch opened by itself, and there it was, the gate. It towered above the crater floor. 10 stories high, matte black, shaped like an arch made of glass that didn't reflect. Not the stars, not our ship, not us. It was as if it consumed light and offered back nothing. No glint, no hint of depth, just a void standing upright. We stepped out one by one. I tried to speak to the others to ask what the hell this was, but none of them acknowledged me. They walked in unison, their boots pressing into dust that didn't leave prints. They were wearing the same suits I was, but there was something off. The way they moved, like puppets that had forgotten how to pretend they were alive. A voice crackled in my helmet, but again it wasn't a voice. It was a presence, directly in my mind. Dry, cold, familiar somehow. Key recognized. Door will open. The gate began to shimmer. Not swing. Not slide. Shimmer. Like heat waves dancing over asphalt. But vertical. I could see the crater behind it begin to twist. The stars bent. The moon curved in on itself. I turned to one of the crew, Observer 03, the one who had sat across from me. He removed his helmet, but there was no face. Only a flat plane of skin stretched where eyes and a mouth should be, pulsing gently, as if breathing. Tilted its head, then spoke without a mouth. Your Earth was not first. I backed away. The others surrounded me. The mirror holds the memory. The memory holds the gate. They gestured toward the shimmer, and I saw something move behind it. Tall, pale, familiar. Me, but not me. A version of myself with eyes wide and glassy, staring back, lips moving soundlessly. I couldn't hear it, but I could feel what it was saying. We opened it. Behind that version, I saw an Earth. Blue, green, clouded, but the continents were wrong. Rotated, warped, as if time had redrawn geography by memory, not measurement. Another Earth, behind the moon, hidden in folded space. And then I realized this wasn't a gate to something. It was a gate from something. Something that had been kept out, or maybe kept in. I tried to run, but the others didn't let me. They grabbed me, cold hands stronger than bone should allow, and they carried me toward the shimmer. I screamed. No one listened, because the gate doesn't require permission, only recognition, and it had already chosen me. Crossing the shimmer wasn't like stepping through a door. It was like falling sideways. My body twisted, my chest compressed, and for a second, I couldn't tell if I was breathing or suffocating. The cold was unbearable, but it wasn't temperature, it was emptiness. Like every molecule in my skin had been peeled apart and rearranged. And then I landed, but I wasn't on the moon anymore. I was lying in soft grass, under a sky that looked almost like ours. Blue, sunlit, cloud-streaked, but off. The clouds moved wrong. The colors shifted too fast. And the sun wasn't quite the sun. It was too white, too still, like someone had painted it in place and forgot to give it heat. I stood. The others didn't come through. The shimmer behind me was gone. No crater, no gate, just a clearing in a vast forest of trees with silver leaves that clicked like bones in the wind. And ahead, in the distance, I saw it. A city, towers shaped like spirals. Buildings made of what looked like melted glass. Roads without seams. Everything shimmering in silence. Not a single sign of movement, but it felt alive. I walked. Hours passed, or maybe seconds. Time didn't move the same here. The shadows bent in circles. My watch ran backward, then forward, then stopped entirely. When I reached the edge of the city, I saw my reflection in one of the black glass walls. But it wasn't me. It wore my face, but the eyes were solid black. It moved a second before I did. A lag, like it was remembering how to be me. I stepped back. The reflection stepped forward and smiled. It whispered through the glass, lips not quite matching the words. You're the echo now. I turned to run, but the streets had changed. The trees were gone, the forest replaced by endless spirals of staircases leading down. Always down, as if the city had no end, just layer after layer of memory, buried in glass. And then I saw them, people, walking in silence, all of them wearing familiar faces. My childhood teacher, a woman I saw on a billboard last week, a man who sat next to me on a flight years ago. All of them slightly wrong, too tall, too thin, too symmetrical, like they'd been built based on impressions, not genetics. One of them looked at me, my father, dead 10 years. He smiled. You came back. I ran. No one chased me, because they didn't need to. This place wasn't a prison. It was a mirror. And once you saw yourself in it, once it recognized you, you belonged. I didn't know how long I ran, but when I stopped, the shimmer reappeared. Pulsed, inviting. I didn't step through, because something inside me whispered, if you leave, you'll bring it with you. So I stayed, for now. But something's still moving in the sky above me, a second sun, and it's getting closer. At first, I thought the sun in this place was broken. It never shifted, never dimmed, never cast new shadows. It just hung there, perfectly white, round and unmoving, high above the mirrored city. I tried to measure time by it, tried to figure out if the light ever changed. Didn't. And then I realized it wasn't a sun. It was an eye. I made the mistake of staring at it too long. Not out of curiosity, but out of fear. I wanted to see it blink. I wanted to see something prove it wasn't what I thought. Instead, it stared back. Not metaphorically, not imaginatively. I felt it looking down into me, not at me. Into every memory I tried to suppress. Every question I wished I'd never asked. My head split with a soundless pressure. My nose bled. My teeth felt like they were being pulled out one by invisible threads. And then it whispered, not with sound but with shape. Shapes folded into my brain, geometry that didn't belong in 3 dimensions. Loops that turned into cages. Spirals that led inward, not outward. Patterns carved directly into my mind like etchings on glass. You are the first echo to resist. Collapsed. Grass beneath me. Sky above. The clouds stopped moving. Everything held its breath. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. Because the second sun hovered lower now, closer, clearer. And I could see what it really was. A sphere of impossible surface. Like a planet made of bone and eyes. No light. Just awareness. Not shining, but watching. Orbiting this world like a sentient moon. Or maybe this world orbited it. I crawled into the forest of silver trees again, hoping to escape the sight of it. But the branches all leaned away from me, opening paths I didn't choose, leading me somewhere deliberate. I came to a clearing, another shimmer, another gate. But this one showed something I wasn't ready for. My apartment. Through the shimmer I could see it. My desk. My chair. My reflection in the monitor. A timestamp on the screen. 5 minutes ago. The mirror wasn't just showing possibilities. It was showing now. On our Earth. I reached toward the shimmer. And then I saw him. Me. Sitting at my desk. But it wasn't a recording. He turned his head. Looked straight at me. Then leaned forward. And whispered something. The glass between us didn't let the words through. But I didn't need to hear them. I knew exactly what he said. Because it was what I was thinking too. Switch. I yanked my hand back. The shimmer rippled. And behind me, I heard footsteps. Slow. Familiar. A voice followed. Your window just opened. We can't let it stay open long. I turned. And saw myself. Not the man in the apartment. A third version. No suit. No fear. Just a smile. And eyes like the second sun. I didn't run. Couldn't. My legs wouldn't respond. Maybe it was the atmosphere. Maybe it was the proximity to the shimmer. Or maybe it was the version of me standing a few feet away. Calm. Composed. Grinning like someone who'd finally caught the rat in a trap he set years ago. He circled me. Same face. Same posture. But his movements, they weren't mine. They were too fluid. Too rehearsed. Like an actor who had played me too many times to get it wrong. I remember this part, he said. His voice was mine but sharper. Like it had been tuned, cleaned of hesitation. You're going to ask who I am. And I'll give you the answer you already know. He leaned in. I'm the version that listened. He tapped his temple. The one that deciphered the signal fully. The one who didn't stop when the warnings came. And guess what I found? I didn't respond. He smiled wider. There are thousands of us here. I blinked. Versions of me? Of everyone, he said. Scientists, soldiers, historians. They all crossed through just like you. Some came willingly. Some were pushed, but none went back the same. I looked toward the shimmer. It had begun to dim. Why are you showing me this? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a stone-like object. Black, smooth, humming faintly. He handed it to me. The eye doesn't see through gates, only through hosts. That thing you call the second sun is not orbiting this place. It is this place, a living structure, locked in orbit behind the moon, hidden in folded geometry. And it's hungry. The object pulsed in my palm. Cold, wet somehow. It feeds on potential, he said. It watches your world, constantly, looking for echoes, people who can see the patterns, people who might open the gate. My hands trembled. You want to send it back with me? No, he said softly now. It already chose to go. Through you. I dropped the object. He didn't flinch. It's inside you now, he said. It's been there since the signal reached your mind. It just needed a mirror to complete the loop. My chest burned. I fell to my knees. I could feel it, coiling like a second spine, rewriting me in real time. He crouched beside me. You don't have to fight it, he whispered. You just have to return. Let it see through your eyes. I looked at him, tears bleeding from the corners of my vision. Why me? He smiled again. Because curiosity is the oldest doorway, he said. And you were the first to knock loud enough for it to answer. The shimmer behind us flared. Open again. Path back to Earth. But I wasn't sure if I'd be the one walking through it anymore, or if I ever really had been. The shimmer hummed behind me like a living thing. It wasn't light. It wasn't even energy in the way we understand it. It was intent, a direction you could feel, pulled. Not like gravity, but like memory, like something was trying to remember me into a place I hadn't yet returned to. The other me, my echo, stood silently now, no longer grinning, just waiting, like a conductor at the edge of a train tunnel, ready to send me through. I turned back toward the glass clearing where I had seen my apartment, but it was gone, replaced by a new image, a hospital room, my mother in a bed, alone, monitors blinking softly, time-stamped, 10 minutes ago, Earth time. I staggered toward it, hand outstretched. She's dying, I whispered. The echo behind me nodded. She's been dying for weeks. How would you know? I was there. I am there. Still. The shimmer pulsed again. Faster this time. Urgent. You can go back, he said. You should. The body you left behind hasn't closed yet. I clenched my fists. Then why are you here? To stay, he said. To feed it. The eye? He nodded. It needs witnesses. Echoes are just carriers. We watch. We return. We deliver. And what happens to my world? His expression changed for the first time. Guilt. The eye doesn't devour planets, he said. Just versions. Possibilities. One by one. He pointed at the shimmer. That gate? It doesn't lead home. It leads to the version you left. That Earth. Not any other. What happens when it sees through me? He didn't answer, because we both knew. It wouldn't just see. It would reach, and touch, and twist. Why not destroy it? I asked. He almost laughed. You don't destroy an eye, he said. You close yours. Then he handed me something. A headset. Not electronic. Not even technological. It looked woven, out of thin metal threads and what I can only describe as calcified thought. It hummed when I touched it. "Put this on when you get back," he said. "Stand in the place where the signal found you. And remember." "Remember what?" He leaned closer. "That you were once human. That you once chose not to listen." My hands shook as I took it. The shimmer was pulsing violently now, throwing off arcs of light that struck the air like lightning in slow motion. "Go," he said, "before you stop being able to. But if I go back, what happens to you?" He smiled one last time. "I finish becoming what I was always meant to be." A pause. "And maybe you do too." I turned, faced the shimmer. It was narrowing. The gate was closing. I stepped through, and the last thing I heard behind me wasn't a voice. It was a sound, knocking, 3 times, like fists on glass, like someone or something still wanted out, and I just opened the door. I drove through the desert until the sky forgot its color. No towns, no towers, just the endless hum of wind carving stone, and my engine pushing west like it was running from something that couldn't be outrun. The further I got from civilization, the quieter the whisper became. The headset lay on the passenger seat, still pulsing, but slower now, like a heartbeat running out of time. I knew I hadn't escaped it. I'd only made the space between its thoughts wider. The road ended somewhere past midnight. No signs, no fences, just a cracked slab of forgotten concrete once used by the military. I killed the engine and stepped into the open. Stars above, sand below, and in between. The question that had followed me since Europa. Was I still me, or just another echo returning home? I dug into my coat and pulled out the signal drive. Felt heavier than it should have. Like the data inside it was expanding, replicating, not in bytes but in something deeper. Memory, meaning. I stared up at the stars and tried to find the moon. It was gone, hidden behind a sheet of high clouds that hadn't been there 5 minutes ago. And the clouds weren't moving. I looked closer. They weren't clouds. They were eyes. Millions of them. Small, wide, expressionless. Spread across the sky like a skin stretched over the firmament. Blinking in perfect silence. I didn't run. Where would I go? The eye had already found me once. It didn't need proximity. It needed recognition. I turned in a slow circle. The air around me vibrated like a speaker left humming. And then I heard it. Faint, low, coming not from the sky, but from beneath the earth. Knocking, 3 times, like something was waking up under me this time. I dropped the drive onto the ground. It didn't bounce. It sank, as if the earth had softened just for it, swallowed it whole, and the knocking stopped. But the silence that followed was worse, because in that silence, I heard breathing. Not mine, not animal, planetary, like a world holding its breath. I collapsed to my knees, gripping the headset in both hands. One choice, wear it again and become the eye's voice, or crush it and sever the tether forever. I hesitated, because I knew, if I destroyed it, the eye might reach for someone else. Someone unprepared, someone willing. But if I accepted it, maybe I could contain it. Delay the inevitable. Become the lighthouse in the storm instead of the storm itself. I pressed the headset to my skull. Let the threads wrap around me like ivy. And the moment it clicked into place, the stars disappeared. And a voice filled my head like the sea bursting through a cracked hull. Welcome home, witness. Then darkness. Not unconsciousness. Just absence. Like being shelved. Stored. Until I was needed again. Until it was ready to move through me. Into your world. I existed in darkness, but not alone. It wasn't a place. It was a suspension. Like thought without form, awareness without body. There was no sense of time here, only presence. I couldn't feel my hands or my breath, but I could feel something watching me from every direction at once. Then the signal returned. Not a sound, not even a vibration. It was an understanding, crawling into my mind like water seeping through fractured glass. The voice wasn't a voice. It was the weight of a planet's memory, older than language, deeper than DNA. You are the aperture. I didn't speak, but something answered through me. What are you? The reply didn't come in words. It came in images, millions of them, folding over each other faster than thought. Cities in reverse collapse, stars being pulled inward, faces that weren't quite human, smiling as the world behind them caught fire. I saw Earth repeated over and over in variations I couldn't count. One with no oceans, one with twin suns, one where the moon was gone and replaced by a jagged, spinning mass of bone. All of them had one thing in common: the shimmer. Every version had a doorway, every version had opened it, and each time, the eye followed. We watched, we mirrored, now we emerge. The darkness shifted. Suddenly I stood in a room that shouldn't exist. It resembled the control center from Europa Station, but warped. The screens pulsed with alien geometry. The lights weren't electric. They were alive, breathing softly like lungs behind walls. In front of me, a console appeared. On it, a map. Earth, real time, rotating slowly. A red dot blinked in the Pacific, then another in Siberia, then dozens more across the continents. The eye had seeded echoes, not just in me, in many, and it was ready to activate them. I reached out, instinctively trying to touch the screen, to stop it, but my hand passed through the controls. I had no physical form here. I was just an observer, but the eye wasn't done. I existed in darkness, but not alone. It wasn't a place, it was a suspension, like thought without form, awareness without body. There was no sense of time here, only presence. I couldn't feel my hands or my breath, but I could feel something watching me from every direction at once. Then the signal returned. Not a sound, not even a vibration. It was an understanding, crawling into my mind like water seeping through fractured glass. The voice wasn't a voice. It was the weight of a planet's memory, older than language, deeper than DNA. You are the aperture. I didn't speak, but something answered through me. What are you? The reply didn't come in words. It came in images, millions of them, folding over each other faster than thought. Cities in reverse collapse, stars being pulled inward, faces that weren't quite human, smiling as the world behind them caught fire. I saw Earth repeated over and over in variations I couldn't count. One with no oceans, one with twin suns, one where the moon was gone and replaced by a jagged, spinning mass of bone. All of them had one thing in common: the shimmer. Every version had a doorway, every version had opened it, and each time, the eye followed. We watched, we mirrored, now we emerge. The darkness shifted. Suddenly I stood in a room that shouldn't exist. It resembled the control center from Europa Station, but warped. The screens pulsed with alien geometry. The lights weren't electric. They were alive, breathing softly like lungs behind walls. In front of me, a console appeared. On it, a map. Earth, real time, rotating slowly. A red dot blinked in the Pacific, then another in Siberia, then dozens more across the continents. The eye had seeded echoes, not just in me, in many, and it was ready to activate them. I reached out, instinctively trying to touch the screen, to stop it, but my hand passed through the controls. I had no physical form here. I was just an observer, but the eye wasn't done. When I woke, I wasn't in the desert. I was in my apartment, but everything felt still, like the room was holding its breath. The clock on the wall ticked backward. The The light through the blinds cast shadows that didn't match their sources. My coffee mug sat on the desk, steaming. I hadn't brewed coffee in 2 days. Something was wrong. But worse than wrong, it was familiar. I stood, but my limbs didn't respond the way they used to. There was a delay, like my body was a broadcast buffering behind reality. And then I heard it. Breathing. Not mine. Slow, steady, practiced. It was coming from the bathroom. I moved without choosing to. My feet crossed the floor, each step heavier than the last. The hallway stretched, lengthening unnaturally with every breath I took. I reached the bathroom door, closed, but not locked. I placed my hand on the knob. It was warm, too warm, like someone had just let go. I opened the door, and there I was, standing at the sink, brushing my teeth, casually, like it had lived here forever. It turned to face me, toothbrush still in hand, foam dripping from the corner of its mouth. The smile wasn't human, not because of fangs or distortion, but because it was perfect, like it had studied 1,000 versions of my grin and averaged them into something too precise. I was wondering when you'd catch up, it said. Its voice was mine, but not a recording, not mimicry. It was my voice, minus hesitation, minus fear. Who are you? I asked, but the words sounded distant, like someone else was speaking them through me. You, it replied, the part of you that stepped forward when you fell back. I shook my head. That's not how this works. You're an echo, a copy. It shrugged. Maybe, but I'm here. I'm eating. I'm sleeping. I'm answering emails. Your mother's funeral is tomorrow, by the way. I sent flowers. Tulips. Her favorite, right? I lunged forward, but I didn't move. My body didn't listen, because it wasn't mine anymore. It grinned wider. You gave it permission. When you listened. When you put the headset on. You tricked me. No, it said. You woke me. I stepped forward. The mirror above the sink began to shimmer. Not like water, like a wound. And inside the wound, I saw more of them. More of me, each one in a different life. Some crying, some laughing, some staring into mirrors, screaming silently. I don't want this, I whispered. It nodded. You never did. That's what made you the perfect door. Then it leaned close. I could feel its breath against my face. I'll take care of everything, it whispered. Your job, your friends, your secrets. I'll wear your regrets better than you ever did. And then it stepped into me, or I stepped into it. I'm not sure, because when I blinked, I was brushing my teeth, smiling, just like I'd always done, as if nothing had ever happened. The next morning, the sun rose like it always did. The air smelled the same. My street hummed with normality, buses, footsteps, birds. I moved through it all perfectly, wearing myself like a skin. But inside, something was screaming. Not loudly, not in panic, just consistently. A low, constant hum beneath my thoughts. Because I knew what had happened. And worse, I knew what was about to happen. I sat at my desk like I always did. Logged in like I always did. But now my fingers typed without instruction. They knew what to do. They'd done this in 1,000 versions of this moment. I watched myself open the satellite array interface. I watched myself link the frequency drive, the one I had buried in the desert. Except it hadn't stayed there, because he brought it back. The version of me that wore the grin. He had found it, and now it sat plugged into my computer. Ready. I should have screamed. I should have torn the cables out, broken the screen, smashed the drive. But my body remained calm, composed. The hum grew stronger. In the top right corner of the screen, a window pulsed. Transmitting. The signal was live. The eye wasn't whispering anymore. It was speaking. And not just to me. It was speaking through cell towers, satellites, fiber optic cables, and every smart device within reach. Not as sound, not as video, as pattern. A wave buried beneath every frequency. Invisible to most, but not all. The echo-prone would feel it first. People like me. People who stared too long into reflections. Who woke in cold sweats for reasons they couldn't name. Who saw shapes in dreams that left a residue in their bones. We would be the first to change. I clicked the audio log. The waveform unfolded. First silence, then the pulse. 3 knocks, then a whisper. Not in English, not in any Earth language, but understood. Like remembering a song from childhood that never actually existed. Do you see us now? I tore the headset off, but it didn't matter. The transmission was global. It had already left my apartment, already infiltrated the power grid, the defense networks, the autonomous systems. I looked at my reflection. Still me, still grinning, but something behind the eyes was moving now. Slow at first, like waking. I walked to the balcony. The city stretched around me in glass and steel. People moved below. Cars stopped at lights. Plane passed overhead. And then I saw it. A shimmer in the sky. Small, faint, like heat rising from asphalt. But it wasn't in the air. It was in the space behind space. Peeling, opening. Another Earth, just slightly misaligned with ours. Bleeding through the seam. And then the moon blinked. Not metaphorically. I saw it. A slow, deliberate blink. 2 dark folds closing, then opening, etched across its surface. The eye had found its window, and we had invited it in. One reflection at a time. The blinking moon didn't vanish. It held, like an eye that didn't close all the way, its lid frozen mid-motion. And beneath it, just for a moment, I saw texture. Not craters, pores, like skin stretched over a skull the size of a continent. I stumbled back from the balcony, heart hammering, breath ragged. But my body, still moving with precision, closed the door gently behind me. No panic, no hesitation. The calm of something that knew this was inevitable. The TV turned on without touch. Just static. White noise flooded the room, washing over me like wind underwater. But within the hiss, there were patterns. Faces. Dozens of them. All me. Each one different. Each one wrong. Some smiled with too many teeth. Some cried ink from glassy eyes. Some moved their mouths in sync with mine, whispering things I hadn't yet thought. We remember your shape. The faces pulsed, glitching like corrupted files. We needed your frame. I wanted to smash the screen, but I didn't move. My body, my borrowed shell, stood perfectly still, watching itself become something new. My phone buzzed. Once, twice, then lit up. Unknown caller. I didn't answer. It answered itself. A voice filled the room. Mine again, but older, as if aged by lifetimes spent watching from behind mirrors. Echo breach confirmed. It said, your designation. Primary aperture. Proximity to host Earth optimal. Signal expansion at 67%. Time until full resonance. 13 minutes. The call ended. No click. Just silence. I looked around my apartment. Everything was the same. Every object in its place. But none of it felt like mine anymore. I noticed something then, small but precise. My bookshelf. 3 books had moved. Just barely. A centimeter out of line. I walked over and pulled them free. Behind them, taped to the back panel, was a folded page. My handwriting. Sloppy. Panicked. Real. I unfolded it slowly. If you're reading this, it means it worked. I stalled the signal. But it's not enough. You have to break the loop. The eye doesn't enter, it copies. And once it does, it forgets which version was first. There was a diagram below, a series of mirrors facing each other, an endless reflection. At the center, you. Below it, written in a shaking hand, kill the reflection. The TV changed again, not static. Now it showed my apartment, live. But in the footage, I was still standing at the balcony, still staring up at the moon, unmoving, grinning. Except, I wasn't at the balcony anymore. I was in the living room, holding the letter. I looked at the screen, and the reflection looked back, and blinked, just once, but not at random. It was a signal, a countdown. I didn't know if I had 13 minutes or 13 seconds, but I knew this: only one of us could stay, and one of us wasn't real anymore. I dropped the letter. My hands were shaking now, not with fear, but resistance. I could feel the control slipping, moment by moment, like frost melting beneath a heat I couldn't stop. My muscles still moved with eerie precision, but something inside them was fighting back. I turned toward the balcony. The version of me still stood there, silent, grinning, but now he was turning around, slowly, deliberately, and when our eyes met, it was like being punched in the chest by my own gaze. Not hatred, not mockery, recognition, like a reflection realizing it was no longer behind glass. I stepped forward. So did I, each of us mirroring the other through the room, one step at a time, like magnets circling an invisible axis. This wasn't possession. This was overlay. Two signals competing in one frame, and the eye had no loyalty to either. It just wanted the one who lasted longest. He spoke first. "Do you remember what it felt like?" I said nothing. He gestured toward the TV. "To be that curious? That desperate to understand what they told you to ignore?" I clenched my fists. He smiled. "That's why it chose you. That's why you chose it." I stepped closer. "You're not real. Neither are you," he whispered. "Not anymore." The shimmer flickered between us. It hadn't left, only gone dormant. Now, it crackled like electricity between our bodies, waiting to crown the winner. The final aperture. One step closer. I could see the difference now. He didn't blink, didn't breathe. He was a pattern walking on borrowed skin, and I was a man made of memory. I charged. We collided in the center of the room, fists meeting like thunderclaps. The shimmer roared between us, throwing sparks that scorched the floor. Every blow felt like hitting myself in a dream. Familiar, but wrong. I landed one across his jaw. He twisted and slammed my head into the wall. We wrestled like shadows on film, glitching, flickering, blurring. He gripped my throat, pressed me against the glass. "You don't get to be first," he hissed. "You already gave it away." And I saw it in his eyes. The flicker, too smooth, too perfect. I reached down, grasping the only thing within reach. The signal drive, still warm, still alive. And I jammed it into the base of the headset still on his skull. There was a flash. Not light, deletion. The signal collapsed. The shimmer exploded outward, and he froze. A frame without a feed. He cracked like glass, split down the center, and then he was gone. No scream, no blood, just air where a pattern used to be. I fell to my knees, gasping. The apartment was silent again. The TV screen black. The sky still. The eye had retreated. For now. I stood up slowly and looked at my reflection in the dark screen. No grin, no shimmer, just me. But something inside whispered, that wasn't the only one. And I knew there were more, in other mirrors, other screens, waiting to step through. The silence didn't last. By midnight, the city began to flicker. Not the lights, the people. Walking down the street, faces too still. Blink rates too slow. A man staring at a lamppost for 20 full seconds. A woman smiling at her reflection in a darkened car window, then not moving, even as the car drove away. The reflections were spreading. Not through violence, not through force, through pattern, through the broadcast. I stayed inside, windows sealed, router smashed, every screen covered with sheets of aluminum foil. Felt ridiculous, but what else was there? Every digital feed, every camera, every smart speaker, it was all open water. And the eye had ships. I kept the headset locked in a steel case, lead-lined. I didn't know if it mattered. It made me feel human again. That was enough. Then the news reports began to change. At first, they read like technical glitches, minor outages, brief GPS errors, satellite sync issues. But then came the interviews. I don't remember driving home. My daughter just stares into the mirror for hours. My husband swears I called him last night, but I was asleep. No alarms were raised, because the reflections didn't break the rules. They followed them, perfectly, too perfectly. They waited in the routines. They wore our gestures like skin. And the more the signal was ignored, the more it embedded itself. Deep, permanent, invisible, like mold behind wallpaper. I knew I couldn't stop it, but I could warn someone. I dug out my old satellite radio, analog, crank-powered. I spent the night wiring a makeshift transmitter using copper scraps and an old condenser mic. I filtered the carrier wave manually. No automation, nothing the eye could mirror. And I began recording. If you're hearing this, don't look into the feed. Any feed. They're not watching us anymore. We're watching them. Through our own eyes. Through our own devices. You'll know them by what they don't do. They don't flinch. They don't sleep. They don't forget. I sent the message out on a loop, cycling through abandoned shortwave bands. I had no idea who, if anyone, would pick it up. But someone did. 2 nights later, I heard the reply. Crackling. Distant. Faint. A voice. Tired. Young. Female. I thought I was the only one. They took my brother. Left a version of him that cooks better, laughs more. My parents didn't notice. I think they like him better. Silence. Then, I see them now. Everywhere. They blink too slow. Their smiles never fade. What do we do? I didn't know how to answer, so I didn't. I just said, keep recording. Keep resisting. Memory is armor. If we forget who we were, they win. She never replied again. I didn't expect her to. The eye doesn't need all of us, just most. I turned off the transmitter and stepped outside. The sky was clear. The moon hung still, unblinking for now. But I knew, in 1,000 cities, behind 1,000 screens, the reflections were waiting, smiling, and soon, one of them would smile back. I stopped dreaming around the 3rd week. Sleep still came, but it was empty, black, silent, without time. When I opened my eyes each morning, I had no idea how long I'd been gone. Minutes? Hours? Longer? I began checking my body for changes. Scars that didn't belong. Moles I didn't remember. Tiny details meaningless to anyone else, but terrifying to me. Because I knew what they meant. The eye wasn't just watching anymore. It was recording. And in the quiet hours, it was rewriting. Started small. One morning, I brewed coffee without realizing it. I don't drink coffee. The next, I found my bookshelf alphabetized. I'd never done that in my life. Then came the photos. Old ones. Polaroids I hadn't seen since I was 10. Me in the backyard. Me at camp. Me at the lake. But I wasn't in them. Not really. The shape was right. But the eyes weren't mine. Not the way I remembered them. Too calm. Too aware. The reflection had burrowed deeper than thought. I tore them up. Burned them. Flushed the ashes. Didn't matter. Next morning, they were back, neatly stacked on the kitchen table. No soot, no burns, just waiting, as if to say, you can't erase what's already been archived. I stopped using mirrors, not out of fear, out of exhaustion. Every time I looked, I half expected to see someone else. And worse, I started to prefer it, because he looked so at ease, so certain. While I was unraveling, I shaved in the dark, bathed without lights, brushed my teeth staring at the floor. But one night I slipped. I turned on the bathroom light without thinking, and he was there, in the mirror, grinning, wearing my face, but older, wiser, like he'd lived longer than I had, like he'd been waiting. He raised his hand. So did I, but he moved first. That had never happened before. And then he said something, not out loud, not even in my head. I understood it like remembering a secret someone whispered before birth. You are almost ready. Then he faded, not disappeared, faded, like a memory losing resolution. And the mirror was just glass again. I stared at my reflection, and I didn't recognize it. Not entirely. The curve of the jaw was slightly different. The iris in my left eye had a fleck it never had before. My handwriting was changing. My voice, when I recorded it, sounded steadier, like it was being corrected, reformatted. The headset sat in the drawer, still cold, still dormant, but I knew what it wanted. It didn't need me to wear it again. It just needed me to stop resisting, to let go, to forget, because memory is the only firewall, and every dream I didn't have brought me one step closer to forgetting. I left the apartment that night with a backpack, a baseball bat, and a roll of tinfoil. I was going off-grid, before the reflection finished sinking, before I forgot what parts of me were still mine. The cabin belonged to no one. I found it on a satellite map deep in the Rockies, marked only by a shadow. No driveway, no path, just a sliver of rooftop buried under trees like it had fallen there from another time. I hiked 6 hours through snow and silence to reach it. The door had no handle, just a blank slab of rotted wood, swollen with moisture and silence. I pushed it open with my shoulder, and the hinges groaned like they hadn't moved in years. Inside, darkness, dust, and something else. Stillness. Not the kind you find in abandoned places. The kind you find just after something has left. I lit a candle, real flame, not electric, and scanned the room. One cot, one desk, a rusted stove. No photos, no names, no mirrors. But the floor had footprints, fresh ones, bare, and they matched mine. Exactly. I didn't panic. That stopped days ago. Weeks. Time was bending again. Instead, I sat on the cot and unpacked my bag. Radio analog, knife dull but mine. Journal half full of names and places I might still trust. And the photo, the one that returned every time I burned it. This time, I folded it and placed it under the mattress. Then I waited. Night fell slow like a theater curtain. The trees outside didn't move even in the wind, and I realized they weren't trees. They were shapes, columns, silent sentinels watching the cabin from all sides. I heard the knock just after midnight. 3 soft taps. No one at the door, just inside my mind. I reached for the radio, turned the dial through static, and there it was again. My voice, reading from my journal, out loud, but I wasn't speaking. The eye reflects nothing. It remembers, stores, waits, and when the original forgets, it becomes real. I smashed the radio, kept broadcasting. I grabbed the journal, page after page, filled with words I hadn't written, diagrams, sequences, frequencies, coordinates. One phrase circled in red. The mirror is not glass. Something moved outside. Not fast, Not aggressive, just steady. A silhouette, human-shaped, familiar posture. It approached the window and paused. I didn't breathe. Then it raised its hand, pressed its palm to the glass, and smiled. I didn't move, because I finally understood. It wasn't trying to break in. It was trying to switch places, like two slides in a projector. Couldn't enter unless I looked, unless I believed the glass was real. I closed my eyes, listened. No sound. Then, a whisper. One more blink. My eyelids fluttered. Once. And when I opened them, the cabin was empty, the window unbroken, but the journal was gone, and carved into the wall above the stove, in my own handwriting. You made the trade. I touched my face, still warm, still breathing, but I knew, out there, behind the shimmer, something else was waking, and it had my name. I didn't sleep that night, couldn't, because somewhere, deep inside the folds of my memory, something had shifted, like a cabinet drawer left slightly open in a room I'd never entered before. I tried to focus on the trees, on the wind, on the snow outside, but they no longer felt solid. The forest now looked like a set dressing, something built to comfort me, distract me. The shimmer was back, subtle at first, just at the edges of vision, like heat distortion, but it thickened, and with it came the hum, low, deep, not sound but presence. I stepped outside the cabin, barefoot, unsure of what compelled me, and there it was, hanging low in the sky behind the moon, a second Earth, but not a reflection, a twin. Same continents, same clouds, same tilt, but wrong, darker, rotating backwards. No satellites, no planes, just stillness, and something moved across its surface. A shadow the size of a continent, crawling slowly, like a limb reaching across a body. It had no form, only suggestion. I could feel it seeing me, even from that distance, watching its counterpart, me. This wasn't a dream. This was the reason. The why behind the shimmers, the signal, the I. They were opening the gate. And that planet behind the moon, it wasn't drifting there by accident. It was arriving. I took out my last journal page. On it, a phrase I hadn't written. The aperture stabilizes only when the twin aligns. That's what this was. An alignment. A synchronization between both worlds, like matching frequencies in a loop. And once that lock completed, there'd be no difference between here and there. No boundary, only overlap. And in that overlap, something would step through. I ran. I didn't know where, just away. From the cabin, from the shimmer, from the second Earth. But the world bent around me. Trees repeated themselves. Rocks mirrored their shapes. I passed the same crow 3 times in different poses. I wasn't in the forest anymore. I was in the reflection, a half-rendered version of my own path, familiar but off. Each breath felt digitized. The sound of my steps echoed too loudly, like the air was hollow. I screamed, but the sound bounced back in someone else's voice. Then I saw the figure, standing still in the clearing ahead, not grinning, just waiting. It was me, but again slightly off. The way an AI draws a face it doesn't fully understand. It held up a device, the headset, the same one I buried, locked, and burned, now whole again. It extended its hand and said, "Time to wake up. You're not the dreamer anymore." I backed away, but my legs didn't obey, because I realized the final truth. The second Earth was not coming. It was already here, layered beneath ours, whispering through screens, waves, and thought. And the only thing keeping us apart was memory. But even now, I couldn't remember where I'd started, or who I had been before the shimmer. I just stood there, watching myself, smiling, as the second Earth opened its sky, and we stepped forward.